Hey there, folks. Alex from East to West Hunts here. I am your host, and I am graciously joined by Kent Boucher from the First Gen Hunter podcast. And today, we're gonna truly have conversation here. There's definitely no agenda to this topic aside for there's a lot of stuff that is out there right now that can be deemed pretty scary relative to a bunch of different laws being signed into play, license fees. So I think our conversation will stray in multiple different directions. But stay tuned because we're going to cover off on things that will affect you during your hunting seasons, depending on what state you are potentially going to be hunting, and for your future for access and really just know-how. So without further ado, Kent, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me back on, Alex. This is kind of I have this feeling in the pit of my stomach right now.
I know.
Because of the topic of tonight's conversation, and when you put that in the scope of everything else that's been going on here recently, it just kind of makes you a little, I don't know, nervous.
Yeah, I think that's the right word. And for reference to viewers and listeners, so right, we're always reading something relative to hunting or access or laws. I think we like to keep up with stuff, that's for sure. But there were a few intriguing articles and I'd say just points that kind of hit over the past few weeks. And I'd sent it over to Kent and I'm like, we should definitely sit down and talk about this because some of this stuff's not necessarily like signed into law yet, but some of it is. And
Yep.
I think it might be surprising. And I was working out today and today's technically my off day. So I'm like, I had to drop the kiddo off at soccer and I can't sit there and watch her. They don't let you go in, so they don't get all the parents in there. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do XYZ. I needed to go pick up, of all things, a toilet from Home Depot. And then I'm like, oh, I'll make it back in time and that'll be it. Well, I still had like 40 minutes. So I'm like, all right, I'm still going to go do cardio. So I end up on the treadmill at the gym and I was sitting there going, some of the stuff that we're going to talk about relative to it's already happened, and so let's kind of throw the first one out. So I had seen I saw an article that was essentially titled Oklahoma is just the latest state to crack down on non-resident hunters.
Yeah, this is by Meat Eater, right?
Yeah, that was a Meat Eater article, right, that hit. And I was like, oh, okay, well, Jordan wrote it. We've chatted with Jordan before, yep. And I'm like, I think he's a stellar writer. So
absolutely. Yeah, he's one of their best, honestly.
Yeah. So I'm like, all right, he's worth a read, right? So I jump into it and I'm like, I won't forget the line. It was something of the essence of, if you lived in Texas and you were going to go across the border to Oklahoma to hunt, you had to purchase a $209 license and like a $500 permit to hunt deer. But then the additional piece came in where it was like, now thanks to this bill, a hunter is also going to have to pay an additional $100 to hunt on state managed lands, such as like wildlife management areas or national wildlife refuges, which is like, okay, now we're adding like, man, we gotta pay to hunt public land.
Yeah, and I was wondering about that. Is that just a single fee? You can hunt any public land then once you pay that fee, or is that, is there $100 for state forest, and then you got to pay another $100 if it's national forest, or does it all? I mean, does one payment give you access to everything, or
It does. So here's where my thought came on while I was doing cardio. I'm like, like in Michigan, we have to pay, and they wrap it into our like our license plate renewals for our cars, but there's a stamp that you pay, and that goes towards like state managed parks, game management areas, stuff like that. And I'm like, is that similar? Because I feel like it technically kind of hits in the same ballpark. Obviously, it's state managed, but it seems like states are just going towards anything that's public or should be utilized by multiple folks, you're going to have to pay a fee to walk on that property, whether it's public or it's state managed or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and how reactionary will other states be? So
Correct.
there's an interesting law that the state of Indiana has where maybe they've taken away, but as of a few years ago, when I learned about this law, I found it to be very interesting. And the law is if you buy land, I'm pretty sure this is what it was. So if you buy land as a non-resident in Indiana, you buy, let's say, like a 50-acre hunting property in Indiana, you can get a resident priced deer tag because you're hunting your property in Indiana.
Hmm.
However, if the state that you are a resident of does not allow that, so Iowa is a great example. You could own it. You could own. Let's see. Iowa's about, I think, 36 million acres. You could own a 35 million acre farm in Iowa, but if you lived in Indiana, you are not allowed to get a resident deer tag. You're not even allowed to get a landowner tag. You are a
Yeah.
non-resident hunter, so you go into the non-resident point buying, um, you know, a limited draw for a deer tag. And Indiana's law says specifically if your state behaves that way, then it's the same rule here, buddy. You got to buy a non-resident tag in Indiana if you're coming
It's like
from
reciprocity.
right. Yeah, yeah. And in that case, I don't know. I kind of like that because it's just a very like it's technically a free thing because what they're doing is they're just protecting their own residents. They're
Yeah.
they're they're you know they're not raising the price on you. The price doesn't have to be raised on you, I guess is what it's saying. But if you're going to be stingy, we'll be stingy is kind of what they're doing.
I don't mind that. I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm hunting another state, I'm expecting to pay non-resident fees, right? I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
just I like that's ingrained in my head from
Right.
every tag application I'm doing. But actually, Michigan does something similar, not reciprocity wise, but you only have to pay a non-resident license, but then your tags are resident feed.
Okay.
So it's $151 for a non-resident license, where like a resident license is $11.
Mm-hmm.
So right, but then you're like if you get a turkey tag, it's $15, just like I pay $15, or
Yeah.
a deer tag's $20. It's it's not bad, right? So like when I have clients come out or I have buddies come out and they're hunting, like I'm like, dude, it's actually kind of cheap relative to other states, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I I understand some of that reciprocity stuff, and in some cases, I even kind of give them a little nod of approval for creativity. But what what I fear is every state. I mean, imagine if America became such a way where every state charged every person, every non-resident that comes to their state, essentially a trespassing fee to go on public land, especially considering, and granted, I understand that it's really, in a lot of cases, state game and fish officers who end up having to patrol, the activity that's going on even national land. Some places will have the help of like, federal, park rangers or other staff that help. But where we were hunting in Colorado recently, uh, a lot of a big chunk of where we were was BLM, and that I assume if there was if one of us did something wrong, it would have been a Colorado Parks and Wildlife
Yes. Yeah.
game officer. So I understand the state has costs wrapped up in federal property. However, as a citizen of America, you have like your money, your tax dollars are already going to that land anyways. and you're almost paying a trespass fee to not almost you are you're paying a trespass fee to go onto land that you own.
Correct.
I can understand more the state side of it, where it's just purely a state park or state forest or whatever. I can understand the argument there a little bit more because you really do not, other than your tag fees and license fees, you really are not financially contributing to what goes on that state land. But
Mhm.
for anything with a national label on it, I just think it's unfair.
Well, you mentioned Colorado, and Colorado just they just signed into law like the craziest gun bill ever, and
Oh,
in
really? I didn't hear about that one.
oh yeah,
I knew they were
it's
reworking all. We had a conversation on the reworked
oh it's
tag
dude,
stuff.
it's worse than California. California looks like it's the nicest place ever compared to this one.
Oh man.
And
Wh-
what they did was they wrapped in CPW, which is Parks and Wildlife, into the bill where they're essentially like they have funding responsibility towards like gun violence in the state now. And like the worry is that CPW won't have money because they're tied into gun. Like, what does Parks and Wildlife have to do with gun purchases? You know what I mean?
So
Like that's
so
pretty
I don't
ridiculous.
understand what's their new responsibility within all that. They
I,
have to.
I I don't know all of the details, but essentially, like they're because they're planning to amend it, but essentially the what's the best way of tying it in? Like, let me kind of read it to you, and you kind of make sense of it. It says, according to this, it would prohibit the sale and purchase of firearms with detachable ammunition magazines or gas-operated semi-auto handguns with detachable magazines. And it says the bill carves out exemptions for individuals who receive hunter education training courses certified by CPW. So they're basically tying in like hunter's safety and hunter's ed to
Uh,
certifying people to be able to have like a particular gun.
so they're predicting a huge influx of people going through CPW provided curriculum and um classes where they got to staff it. They got to read the test scores and keep track of all this data for a whole bunch of people that could could not care less about hunting. They just want to own a gun that fits within those constraints.
Yeah, and then it basically had said that it was requiring CPW to issue ownership eligibility cards for the weapons rather than the county sheriffs. So they're basically making it where Colorado Parks and Wildlife is taking responsibility over what the local PD was doing. So they're
Imagine the size and force and the amount of funding difference between law
correct.
enforcement and CPW.
It's
Holy
it's
cow.
crazy. So I feel like they're gonna wrap CPW into so much crap. They're gonna be so thin,
Yeah.
and they're not gonna be able to. It's kind of like in a business where you are responsible for doing your business really, really well, but now you just have a bunch of other stuff you're responsible for. And now you don't really have like the expert pertaining to one thing. Now they're just involved in a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
You kind of dilute the ownership or what the responsibility is. It just doesn't work out very, very well. It's wild. But yeah, they have to have like a training course. So it says sponsors brought the initial amendment requiring the training course in an effort to garner support under their governor, who said he would not sign the bill into law if it did not contain exemptions for hunters and sport shooters. So it it's all over the place. I got roped into this because I ended up having somebody from Colorado who was like on the legislative aspect of it reach out and was like, "Hey, are you aware of this?" And I was like, "No." And it was
Hmm.
so hush hush. And then I ended up getting Charles from Howell involved,
Yeah.
and it was so quick to go that like how I don't know if Charles was aware of it or not, but like the next day they were already like voting on this, and they were having to like basically go to the state to
That
start.
is that is becoming such common practice now. I mean, it just happened last night with the sale of public
Public
lands
lands. Yep.
in Utah and Nevada. It was a subcommittee of some kind. I don't think it's. I don't think it's. I would assume it has to pass the House and the Senate. And I
Yeah, they
don't.
feel pretty confident. And again, I know we've said this before, but it's Utah Republicans pushing this.
Yeah, it
They're
is.
just constantly, and it's 11,000 acres of public land in Utah and Nevada that could be up for sale because of this last minute amendment that was approved by the House of National Resource Committee.
Hmm.
So they're trying to like reconcile a larger bill, and it states Republicans anticipate passing it in a single vote. So it's kind of scary to just think like, man, with a snap of the finger, the 11,000
Yeah.
acres just goes, and you know,
Yeah.
I I don't. No matter how you swing it, once you open up Pandora's box, it's very difficult to close Pandora's box, whether
Right.
it's landlocked public land or not, or whatever the case is. I think it's just going to start something that is going to be very difficult to reverse.
Yeah. I 100% agree. So, um, I heard so Meat Eater had a podcast come out. Was it last week with I think it was a governor, Tim Sheehy. Is he governor of like Wyoming or something, or Montana maybe? And or a senator. I think he's a governor. Um and um it's a pretty good conversation. It was mostly focused around um wildfires. But then at the end, because I believe he's a Republican, um, they got into the conversation you and I have had either on your show and or my show or both, maybe even, um, about Burgum. Doug Burgum, the Secretary of the Interior, has
Mm-hmm.
been butting up with the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD housing or HUD housing, however you say that, HUD,
Yep. HUD.
um,
Yep.
um, to sell some public land to put in affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, this is land. These are old. Currently, these are old uh, military bases that are just sitting unused. He gave the example of an old military warehouse and I think it was in Indianapolis, or no, it was in Gary, Indiana, I think, that the federal government owns, and that it's just sitting empty. And so, in other words, they're giving examples of these for whatever reason through the you know the weird circumstances of history. We still have these pieces of ground that are basically of no use to anyone because they're fenced off, or they're a lot of times old military bases have different contaminants on site from testing weapons and other things, and so they don't let the public in, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's making the case like, yeah, see, these are, and I understand the point there. I'm not going to say that you know America is big losers by selling that empty warehouse in Gary, Indiana, and the whatever number of acres it sits on. um However, that idea of that precedent, we'll stick with Meat Eater here. Steve Ranella years ago, I think he was talking about uh, states that allow crossbow hunting um, for any kind of purpose as a replacement for archery, regular
Mm-hmm.
vertical bow equipment. How it's arch bow hunting clubs from those states will be like, oh, first it's you let so and so use them, next thing you know everyone's using them. And
Yep.
he's like, people call that the slippery slope fallacy. He's like, man, I just kind of feel like the slippery slope fallacy is a fallacy in of itself. And I agree. I think that people who say that, oh, it's you're talking about a slippery slope. It's kind of like the people that will always throw out there. And I'm a science guy. I used to be a biology teacher. People always talk about causation is not correlation does not mean causation, and which is true, but it oftentimes does.
Yeah,
It
totally.
oftentimes does. Just because it doesn't all the time doesn't mean that there's not a strong association there that is causal. Um, and the same thing goes with once we start selling this land. And the idea is we're selling this land. This is what the argument for last night's midnight legislation was that we're going to use it to pay down on debt. So
Right.
we need to do some math here, Alex. I just looked up on Google how many federal acres we own, which is um uh 640 million. So I'm gonna do a little calculation here. I'm gonna type in 640 million.
Okay.
Okay, times let's see here, 10,000. I should be able to just add zeros to my end of my number here, but okay. Well, it turns out that's what I should have done. So another 3, so we're adding 5 zeros. So another 3 would be 640 billion plus 2 more would be, what is that, 64 trillion?
What kind of math you doing there?
Yeah, something like that. I think I think that's what that is. Man, we're doing math on the spot here. That's dangerous.
Well,
Um, but I mean, what are we, 36 trillion? So I guess you could theoretically at $10,000 an acre, which a lot of that land is not worth that. It's worth $3,000 an acre. Um, you could pay off the national debt by selling all of it. But then what? You get back to zero. Now you don't own any
right.
land.
You got
Um,
nothing, man.
you
What are you going
got
to collect on the taxes there, and that's it?
right. And who does own it at that point? That's the other question. And I can tell you what, it'll be a handful of people
Well,
that you will never ever have a hope of getting access to from those people.
well, the way that it's
And so
posed
I
basically
don't know.
for the
I believe in the
positioning
slippery
of
slope. I think
Utah's
it's
public
real.
lands,
I
public
think
land in Utah,
it's a
it's
dangerous precedent. But
63% of the
kind of
state is
tying it back
public,
to this thing that you heard
and
about going on in
basically the
Colorado.
statement is it's only covering a third of 1% of the federal lands in the state, right?
Yeah.
So when you read it that way, it's posed as like, well, it's not a big deal, right? I mean, it's not even 1%, but I'm just not on the bandwagon of if it's 1%, half a percent, it doesn't matter because that down the road is going to become a lot more.
Right. Yep.
I think
And, and
that's the moral.
and once you find, I mean, we've proven as humans we like to return to the well. You know what I mean? Once you find, it's just like feeding a bear, right? That bear's not just coming out like, wow, that was a great meal. I'll always
It's
remember
coming
that.
back.
I'll always think, man, what a great day that was. I got that free meal from those humans. No, he's going to be back in tomorrow with some buddies. And then they're going to start getting in your trash can. Then they're going to break into your house when you're not there, and they're going to destroy your house, looking for more food. And it's we humans are the exact same way. That's why we've put some of these restrictions in place, because we did wipe out our wildlife. And why we protect our public land so hard is because we'll use it up, we'll sell it, we'll take the short-sighted um solution, I guess you could call it, the short-sighted treatment for a bigger problem, which is um, over extravagance and wasteful spending and everything else that gets us into our debt hole. And we'll sell off the one of the last good things that we have. And but I mean, we're kind of getting off track here a little bit, although it's all related, I think.
It's all tied, man. I feel like it's very relative.
Yeah, it goes back to the fact that this new tactic, just like in what you were talking about with the Colorado thing, this 11th hour, oh, quick, we got a bill. Oh, quick, we have an amendment. Oh, quick, we have and nobody has any time to really, and I mean, there's still, a legal process that has to take place, but what they're hoping is that they're catching the opposition with their guard down long
100%.
enough to get through. And so what it is it's not based off of, well, what do the constituents think? No, it's based off of what does our party want? And we
Mm-hmm.
want this, and we're going to try and make it happen, even if the majority of Americans or the majority of our constituents are not in favor of it. If we game this the right way, we can still get our way. And that is so un-American. I
Oh,
mean,
it's terrible.
that kind of strategy where you're saying, no, 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 we want the will of the few. I mean, that's just the most undemocratic thing. We want the will of the few over the will of the majority. That's just not how we've set up our country to decide things.
Right.
And that's what this 11th hour stuff is. And they tried that in Iowa too, Alex. They tried it with doing the whole allotting tags for outfitters, deer
Uh-huh.
tags, and just
That
trying to
didn't
strike.
pass.
No, it did not pass. No, thankfully.
Attention hunters, are you sick and tired of the complicated draw systems and tag applications that take place out west? Or maybe you want to plan a western hunt or maybe one of your dream hunts and you don't really even know where to start. Well, that's where East to West Hunts comes in. We take care of everything for you. We'll do the tag applications. We just need to put a strategy in play for you of what you're trying to do and when you're trying to go. Whether it's short term, mid-term, or long term, we want to have that play and that strategy together. And when you do draw a tag, we can look at do-it-yourself options such as hunt plans that detail out exactly how to hunt those areas, or we can get you booked with a guide and outfitter in that specific unit or area. So don't leave that hunt to chance. Give us a call, set up a time on the website, contact us on social media, whatever it is, and let's get planning towards that dream hunt of yours. And let's make it a reality. Check us out on www.east2westhunts.com. Again, that is www.east2westhunts.com. Also check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and podcast. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Yeah. Well, I think here's another way that it's like, I think it's all intertwined. They are hoops that make it more difficult to get access. I think that's one. It also really kind of gets into this like pay to play thing because there's much more money involved, right, to get access that you want. And kind of to circle back to Oklahoma, we were talking about the paying to get onto the public areas, but in same tie to that, there's also this like payment of $100 and then also making it like a lottery to be able to hunt those areas.
Yes.
So it's not that now you're just stipulating, hey, we're going to collect $100, but now you're basically saying it's not even able to be accessed by everybody. Now we're going to put limits on it. So you're going to have to get a tag, and then you have to apply to basically have the opportunity to hunt on these areas. And obviously the limitation or the reasoning to it is, well, we want to lower hunter pressure in those areas. So now you have to, get into this lottery. And again, I think back to like in Michigan we have it, but in a lot of different areas we have a lottery that you have to apply to be able to be one of the few that actually can hunt those areas. So like I see it where we have it now. I'm seeing it in like Western states potentially coming live, and it's going to be it's going to be very, very interesting where like you have this push pull factor of, hey, we're trying to sell all these tags, but now we're limiting people on where they can hunt.
Right.
And it's naturally going to cause an increase in more costs in those tag prices too, if people don't have where to hunt, because then they're going to likely limit those tags even more, and they're going to make them more costly. I just see this like continuing to really just
Yeah,
attack people that really just want to get out in the field and get some meat in the freezer.
exactly. That's exactly right. Let's assess who the winners and losers are going to be in this. Theoretically, the winners will be the resident public land hunters, but let's be honest. Um, Residents, I would be curious to see what is the breakdown in states that have a lot of public land. I imagine it's higher, but in states where there's not a lot of public land, the percentage of resident hunters that hunt on private land versus public land, right? I'm here in Iowa. I'm trying to think if I deer hunted on public land last fall. I don't think
Are you
that I
talking in
did.
Iowa, or are you talking about?
In
Okay.
Iowa. I don't think in my home state. I don't think I hunted on public land once during deer season. Um, I had I had plenty of access to private acres, so therefore, a non-resident coming to hunt public land in Iowa had zero effect on me. Now, I'm granted I'm pretty fortunate. My family owns some land, not a ton, but more than most folks do. Um, and I got some great connections, right? Um, and so that's I have some unusual circumstances there that benefit me. But Caleb's family owns 0 acres in Iowa. And he hunted nothing but private land last year, as far as I could tell.
Mhm.
And I could probably keep listing my hunting friends and explain, or have an idea. And so now, granted, if you go out to like Montana, where there's public land all over the place, most people are hunting public land, and
Totally.
a lot of the little bit of private land that exists, other than private like cattle ranches, a lot of it has been developed into housing developments and municipalities and things like that. But um, so theoretically, though, the winners would be the residents, but I don't really think that effect is going to happen as much as Oklahoma thinks. The
Yeah.
losers, though, like you said, is the common man, the guy who doesn't. I mean, that let's let's be honest. One of the best things of hunting through time has been here in America. One of the best things has been anyone can do it. It's very affordable. Um, Once you have the upfront costs of your gear and your firearm or your bow, once you have those upfront costs, I mean, you can, like for me, I shot a deer this year. Um, I walked to my tree stand that night and from my house, and the only cost I had in it was my tag.
Right.
And then I ended up, it was an 80-degree day, so I had to take him to a processor. Couldn't do it myself. But my archery deer, I butchered that myself. I basically, there again, had almost no cost into that deer other than my tag. It was a very inexpensive hunt. And those days when the laws like this are being made, those days are going away. And so, what I
Totally.
think is going to happen, what the biggest loser is going to be, is the common man, and then also the state, because they're not getting that guy's money anymore because I just think it'll go back to what a lot of hunters have complained and whined about. I loved Tony Peterson's take in that Jordan Sillers article. He's like, look, we've been complaining about this for years. He's like, I grew up hunting in the 90s, and we always used to talk about the biggest enemy for hunters in the 90s were anti-hunters. He's like, now the biggest enemy for hunters has become ourselves, because we
Mhm.
whine and complain about pressure. He's like, and I never see any of these guys increasing their scouting efforts, you
Totally.
know, or going to a guy like you, Alex, and saying, hey man, it's a little bit more challenging now. Maybe I need to talk with an expert who can help me get to places where I have better odds. Instead, they just want to complain, man, it's not as good as it used to be. And so what I predict will happen is the reason, um, it was maybe perceived to be better in older days is because people did not feel comfortable because Onyx didn't exist yet. They didn't feel that they kind of got distracted from the fun of hunting because it didn't exist on more than a handful of TV shows that you had to be watching at the exact right time on a Saturday morning or you wouldn't see it. And so they didn't have the exposure, and they'll just kind of like drift away from hunting. And I think the numbers of hunters is going to decline. And I think that the cost of entry is going to increase. And I think states are going to lose out on funding because they're getting a little bit greedy with some
Totally.
of these law changes.
Yeah, I think some of this stuff's just going to backfire because
100%.
Oklahoma is not certainly Colorado, but it's very similar, right? And if you look
Yeah,
at
yeah. What would you and I? Let's say you and I were like, man, what would be the one reason you and I would go to Oklahoma to hunt?
we'd have an opportunity to hunt private land somewhere.
Well, it would just be because, oh man, we need a place to hunt. Like we don't have any points. We want just we both have a week of time. We want to do a public land hunt. Seems like Oklahoma's kind of cool, right? But now with all this extra junk in the way, that's not going to be on our list.
Yeah. I mean, I have like I have an outfitter that I'd call right off the rip and be like, hey,
Right. Yeah.
You get Kent and I in one of these areas, kind of a deal, and I'd go hunting with him because to me, I rather pay a little bit more and just have the particular areas
Right.
than try to jump through all these hoops and try to apply and get in the lottery to hunt some of these wildlife areas because I mean Oklahoma is not the king of not for
It's
non-resident
not a
hunters
premier
with
state.
no and that I think that's I don't know it's certainly not going to bode well for them, but I think
those states depend on accessibility. That's what they depend on for non-resident hunters. They either have they're like states like to me Nebraska is a prime example, right? What makes Nebraska so great? Well, it's beautiful and all that, but you go out there, there's definitely deer. They're there, but you got to work to find those deer because
Totally.
there's not a lot. I mean, there's just not a lot of calories and there's a whole lot of land. But what gets people to Nebraska to hunt is it's the closest, one of the farthest east states you can hunt mule deer. It's very inexpensive. There's not some crazy lottery or limited draw to get the tags. So therefore, people go there because it's accessible. But if you take that accessibility away, the only way people are jumping through those hoops is if they're getting what Colorado has to offer or what Montana has to offer. You know what I mean?
Well, and you almost push people more towards those states than, which obviously works out in their favor. But I total side note though, I know we're talking about this and we're bouncing around state to state, and obviously there's a lot to digest here for somebody listening or watching. But we're as I said, we're really kind of chatting it up on a bunch of stuff that's kind of hit all at once. I'd be curious, if you comment on any of the podcast aspects or YouTube. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this as far as, the costs. Would you go hunt? Would you go hunt Oklahoma? Would you go hunt Colorado now that you have to jump through more hoops with, applying for archery versus having those over the counter tags? Rifle right now is over the counter, but I know for a fact that's going to go to a limited entry too. Probably, I bet you we hear about it next year. And I, as you were mentioning here, Kent, the percentage of non-resident versus resident, I pulled up the kind of the 2022 stats, but basically it says 54% of over-the-counter elk hunters are non-residents. And Colorado resident hunters are on the decline from non-resident overcrowding. That's the statement. They're basically saying residents are not hunting because of non-residents being in the area. I don't actually buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't buy that at all. I just think, that's what they complain about. But the reality is, like, maybe they're going to hunt other states,
Right.
and
Yep.
I don't know. It's interesting, that there's a lot of moving parts to it. But the moral of the story is it's gonna deem harder to get access, and it's gonna be harder to pay for some of these things. And naturally, over time, what it's going to become is it's only going to become an outfitter game, because this is not going to continue this way if it doesn't change course quickly.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Alex. I 100% agree.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, people are applying, we're getting points, we're doing all these things, and then we're watching prices increase in pretty much every state. You mentioned Montana with their hunting license.
Yep.
Right, that's an increase that's just baked. So we're going to see
$100.
that.
It's
It's
not
$100.
nothing.
Yep.
Think
Yep.
of like your taxidermy bill. If someone gave you $100 towards your taxidermy bill, you'd be like, yeah, heck yeah, that's great. And it's just, it's significant.
Yep.
And I understand that the article also mentioned Missouri's looking at like a 3 to 4% increase in fees. I get that. Like, I understand those small incremental increases because everything is more expensive, right? It's more expensive to pay the guy who's enforcing the Fish and Game rules. It's more expensive to buy the printer paper for the licenses. It's more expensive. Everything is more expensive anymore. Inflation just really has not stopped ever. And so I understand, it's kind of like at work, if you get a 3% raise every year for, cost of living increases.
Sure.
I understand that. I'm not saying I'm never for state game agencies increasing prices, but these big jumps that are coming, and they're coming from everywhere. And part of it, though, too, going back to the beginning of this conversation, is a lot of it's got to be reactive because, well, if what was it? Utah was increasing all those prices. We talked about that recently. Utah is increasing their elk tag prices. Well, Idaho doesn't want to inherit all of the hunting pressure from people deciding not to go to Utah, because now then they're going to have problems. So then Idaho is stuck with this situation of, man, do we increase our prices then just to discourage people from, everyone hunting here instead of Utah? And then what does Montana do? And then what is, on and on. It's kind of a chain reaction where states kind of are left in a bind on what to do.
Well, yeah, to that point, yeah, you're spot on, right? It's always like somebody's trying to catch up to the other one. Idaho is already expensive when it comes down to that, because you don't have points. Some people really like the fact that it's just a lottery,
right?
Which is great. But their licenses, it's $200 to get a non-resident license. So to think like, I'm going to apply and maybe I don't draw anything, then what are you doing with it? It's different than feeling like, okay, I got something out of it because I was able to get points. In Montana, like, I like Montana a lot for a lot of the opportunities, because they have bonus points, they got preference points for the general. But the nice conversation is always like, yeah, Montana is also like, it's not super expensive to get applying to, because that base license is nothing. I mean, they're raising it from 15 to $100. That's, what is that, 566% increase?
Right. Yeah.
We're not talking 4% for for inflation, And I don't know. I don't know how you are, but I think it would be very helpful if a state was to say, hey, here's the play that we're putting in, and here's where this money is going to go, and then tangibly show me where that money is going and what it's doing. Because if you're going to tell me, like in Montana, they're going to use the funding to pay for block management, which is basically getting private landowners to open up their land to people to hunt, then show that. Hey, here's a map. We got an extra couple $1,000,000, and now we got this, and this property, and a bunch of other ones that we've opened up with block management because this funding is directly gone there. It's kind of tough when you're saying, hey, we're going to get an increase, we're going to do this, and then you have really no correlation to like what changed, because
Right.
you just think it's a money grab, and for all you know, there's nothing different.
Yep.
You know, that's how my
That's a
brain
good
works.
point.
I want to see a
Yeah.
chart. I want to see. Show me the properties that you're going to bolster.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. That people get real skeptical real quick when they don't see the promised benefits of those increases and those extra fees. It's a great point. Are you
Well,
a little freaked out overall, Alex, just with, I mean, so a year ago we were all, the buzz was Prop 127, and
whatever. Yeah, the
or
mountain
Prop
lion thing.
27, something like that, the Wildcat, right?
Whatever. Yeah.
Deal out in Colorado. And all this kind of goes back to really when Washington State, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, remember when they basically held spring bear season hostage? Their committee that has the power in that state to set seasons and stuff, they were like a hung jury, right? They couldn't make a decision on whether or not spring bear season needed to happen anymore in Washington. So what they did was they just said, well, if we can't decide, then I guess we can't have it.
Right.
And that was kind of the first real big thing that I remember coming along where anti-hunting legislation was gaining some traction. And then, I mean, obviously it's happened in the past. California banned hunting with dogs, in the 90s or whatever. And
Sure. And mountain
uh,
lion hunting.
and mountain lion hunting. And so I'm not saying that was the first ever by any means, but here in the here and now. Then I think, didn't Colorado tried a different, not Prop 127, they tried a different mountain lion hunt ban. In fact, that one got shot down the day after we talked to Charles for the first time. You and I interviewed him from Howell, and he's like, I got the inside scoop. It's not happening. And that was a big one. And then Prop 127 last year. I know New Jersey within the last 5 years banned their bear hunting, and then they brought it back. But there's just been all of this going on, but now it's kind of weird because now public lands are becoming, as we've just spent this conversation talking about, majorly under attack. And let's be honest, both of us try not to get real political on our shows, but usually the issues that we talked about just a minute ago with banning certain species and seasons and stuff, that's usually a blue issue, right?
Spot on.
Right now
it's a red issue.
Yeah. And I mean, even things like they're talking about cutting back on the Endangered Species Act. Obviously those aren't or reviewing it to see if it's, basically if it's something that we want to continue as a nation having. Obviously those are they're endangered. We're not allowed to hunt them, but hunters love wildlife, and we love all species. We want them to be doing well within their ecosystem. And you even have stuff like that going on now. You have more mining and gas and oil leasing permits that threaten some pretty fragile, pristine wilderness areas. And it just is kind of I guess I don't know who to turn to for help politically. And I think that the longer I've been a part of the hunting community, I just think that in general, you can't make too many blanket statements, but in general, we are a group of people who want what makes sense. You know what I mean? We we don't make a lot of decisions based on emotionally charged, or party line type determinations, right? We want what makes sense.
Yeah,
And I think that it is so critically important right now that we come together. If we aren't going to have a particular party that we can really count on to represent our interests well and protect or not attack even the things that we hold dear that make hunting and fishing and everything else that we like to do outside, even shed hunting. Look at all the new shed
totally.
hunting rules that are out there
Oh
now.
yeah, they had to get their hands on that.
Yep. I mean, I think it's just so important that we then within ourselves come together, kind of going back to Tony Peterson's uh criticisms in Jordan's article, which I think were so valid. We need to quit complaining about it being hard to fill a tag or there's just so many people here. We need to quit throwing shade at people who hunt a certain way or use a certain method of take. I mean, yeah, some friendly, poking fun is of course great, and that's part of hunting culture and it's funny. But at the end of the day, we shouldn't devalue each other. We should look at each other, try to come together and say, hey, we got to work together. We got to rally around through Howl. I mean, it just almost seems like Howl was kicking butt so hard for a few
Mhm.
first 2 years that the enemies to hunting have like rallied together and they're using these 11th hour strategies. They're
Yep.
getting more organized to try and come up with more creative ways to get their way. And I think that, Howl and other organizations that have mobilized hunters, uh, well, have worked great, but we got to have that. We can't just be comfortable with that. We can't just become complacent and be like, oh, Howell's got it. We got to keep using those tools, but we got to come up with other ones, and we still have to be advocating for ourselves by talking to these legislators. And if you voted for one party or the other party, it shouldn't just be, yeah, that's my guy. No, 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 that's my guy, and he better do what I voted for him to do. And if he's not, I need to be letting him know or her know. Um,
Well,
you know,
I think to the moral of that, right? Because yeah, you're right. I don't the politics are the politics, right?
mhm.
It's we got to vote for the issues, not the
Yes,
party per se. So it's
exactly.
like because to your point, we could do broad strokes and say, well, one party really favors having public land, the other one wants to privatize. That's true. Delisting of grizzlies, well, it's probably going to more
Yeah,
likely happen with this whole Endangered Species Act thing than not,
yeah.
which is,
Everything would be delisted then.
that's favorable in that regard. I'm not
Right.
saying it, but again, it's like there's just policies that need to really be like voted on and really talked about versus just like the blanket slate party alignment, because there's no way that you're going to say one of two is going to fix all the problems. It's
Right.
not, and
Right.
that's a major issue. And yeah, you asked if I'm, what did you say? Am I concerned or scared or something?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Concerned. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
freaked out.
absolutely, I'm concerned. It's like I sit there going like, I I don't hunt my own state as much as I hunt out of state,
Right.
and it's
That's a
because
great
I
point.
enjoy going to other states. I enjoy seeing the other areas. I very rarely hunt the same place twice. I mean,
Yeah.
aside for like us hunting in Colorado in that area that I've gone a couple times, I've hunted a couple other units once or twice, but aside for that, I genuinely just like to go see different areas and challenge myself to go
Yeah.
do different things. And it's, that kind of starts giving you a little of a little bit of a diminishing effect when you are getting tighter in the opportunities of where you want to go because of certain things that pop up, like
Yep.
certain states. I don't really advise people apply to, when we're talking about dollars, they're like, hey, like, here's what I want to hunt, and here is my timeline. If it's a short timeline, there's only few places that I really can just say, okay, well, these are going to be your best bang for your buck, because
Right.
a lot of other ones are, it's too costly to get involved and you're probably not going to get a lot of return on it. So, okay, let's wash that out. Or like talk of spring bear hunting, right? Like there aren't that many states that allow spring bear hunting
Yeah.
anymore.
Yep.
So guess what? You
True.
only have these X states to pick from.
Yep.
You know, so uh, is that good or bad? I don't think that's great. I think there should be more opportunity for it because there is a lot of game management opportunities to it, but politics have played a role into it. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm really big on voting for the policy and really to your point, we got to be advocates for ourselves because otherwise nobody else is going to care. We're going to get
Right.
just beat up along the way, and we're going to see more and more of this. You know, where it's every state we're getting nickel and dimed extra over and over and over. You know.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, spot on, man. We need to keep alert.
Yep. Yeah. What else you got on your mind there? You always got something cooking.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're almost done with turkey season in most places, and spring bear is probably just really getting hot right now for guys.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be wrapping up here soon, and then it's the long wait until the fall. But that's a good time of year to be preparing for the fall in whatever ways. Some ways that's just taking care of stuff around the house, so you have that freedom and that long of a leash to go and have some
Mm-hmm.
fun in the fall. But also probably a great time to be talking to you, right, Alex, and getting this fall's plans put together. Of course, if it's buying points and stuff, a lot of places that those days have already come and gone.
Well, you know, to that point, yeah. I think of right now, I think of turkey, spring bear, shed hunting. I know that's your fave.
Yep.
And you know, for me, it's like right now, it's actually the exciting time because we got a few other states opening up for certain things to apply for, but we're waiting for a lot of stuff right now. So like the end of May is like everything starts kind of coming
Yeah.
live, you know. So we'll have Nevada coming due as far as like results. Colorado results are coming. Utah results are coming. A lot of folks found out about Montana for the generals already, so you know people are getting kind of ramped up for that. So it's exciting right now. You know, there's a lot of cool stuff, and then yes, it's hunt planning time. So the summertime is a lot of planning.
Yep. Yep.
So and that's fun.
Yeah.
So no,
It's
it's good.
exciting.
Did you get out for more shed hunting?
So I ended up out. My last shed hunt was in Nebraska this year. Went back to a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Nate's ranch, and in the Sandhills,
Mm.
and just beautiful country. And this year it was a lot better because it didn't snow the second we pulled in.
That's great.
And so with being able to see where we were walking, we found a lot of sheds that we missed last year under the snow and found some really nice fresh ones too. And Caleb went with me and his dad, and man, what a blast that was. And then I've just been so busy with work that I haven't even had a chance to turkey hunt yet this year, but found a couple of morels while I was working yesterday. So that made up for my lack of timber time that I've been able to have this spring. But I might get out yet once with my dad and son or with Caleb next week. So fingers crossed on that.
Love it. Yeah, somehow you got that knack for those morels, man.
I love them, man. They're so good.
I know you do.
Just ate
It,
them tonight.
oh, did you?
Yeah. In fact, I was working outside. My wife had the fan on the range going, and it blows right out right out of the side of the house where it vents. And I was out there with my son Jonas, and all of a sudden we're both like, "Man, what smells so good?" And I'm like, "She's cooking those morels."
Oh, that's epic, man. That's
Uh,
great.
yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
you got a little mini me there with that.
Yep. That's
He's
right.
gonna
He
be
eats
right
them
up your
faster
alley.
than I do.
Well, I hope you get out for some turkey, man. I was just thinking about it actually. Speaking of your neck of the woods, I just did all apps for Iowa, so
Awesome.
got my Iowa point. Looking
Good.
forward
Yeah.
to.
That I was wondering if that had opened up yet.
Yep,
That
yeah, it just opened up, so
yeah.
I wrapped up everybody's real quick. I was like, all right, you got to get Iowa done, and And I'm sitting there looking at my points. I'm like, oh yeah, next year's
the year.
should be able to get out and see Kent. So
Yep, that's gonna be fun, man. We're gonna have a blast.
yeah. Well, that's why I was asking you about that bear hunt, because I'm trying to figure everything out. And I applied for Utah for their essentially like their general deer, but it's called the dedicated hunter program.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that if I get drawn, and I did apply in a group, I got a few folks involved, and there's 4 of us. So if we apply, we all get these tags, but we get the tags for 3 years. So technically we draw this year, get to hunt this year, and then get to hunt next year and get to hunt the following year. But we can only harvest 2 deer out of the 3 years. So I'm trying to figure out hunting in Iowa if we get that bear hunt, because that's going to be fall too.
Well, Caleb and I should be going to see Sam here real soon, so we'll sit down and talk with him and get things squared. It'll be interesting where things stand, though, too, with America and Canada. In a year from now, there's just a lot of tension there. I could see some, it getting petty enough to where hunting ends up on the table.
Well, it was kind of funny. But I was watching hockey playoffs right now. I'm big in all the playoff games and stuff like that. So I'm watching. It was Dallas Stars and the Winnipeg Jets, and they're playing in Winnipeg, right? So you get the national anthem going, and then obviously you see all the Canadians just as quiet as all get out, and now I'm just like, oh man, this place is gonna erupt in a minute, and sure as heck, the game blasts off, and it's just, it looked tough. Like it was just like a straight beating, and and Dallas came out with the win, so good for them. They go up 1-0, but I was just like, that there's got to be more tension just in those games alone,
Oh yeah, yeah. I just don't see how it doesn't somehow spill into the hunting scene. You know what I mean? Where you're not allowed to bring something back, or you're not allowed to bring a firearm across. You can only bring archery equipment, whatever ticky tacky thing. And not just from Canada's side, but I can see America doing the same thing to Canadians. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. It's tough, man. It's tough. Well, hey man, let's sunset this bad boy. I definitely want to thank you for coming on. It's always good catching up and chatting about this stuff, man.
Always good coming on your show, buddy.
So, but yeah, let's kind of give your little segue here. What do you got cooking on your podcast, and any new things listeners and viewers should be aware of?
Yeah. So, just had a couple really awesome interviews. I had Greg Kaigu, I think is how you say it. Alex was on with me with that one at
4 in the morning.
4 in the morning. And he is a hunter he's an alpine hunter is how he would call himself, I believe, from New Zealand. And so you get to hear the fun accent, but also all the really interesting things. And he's I think he said he was 68 years old, something like that. So, and he's been hunting all of his life. So he's got a lot of great historical perspective on how hunting has been changing and how it's been rooted in New Zealand. And I guarantee if you tune into that one, you'll learn some new stuff. Had a great one with Alex on his Aoudad hunt that he went on back in March. That was on recently, and trying to think who I had on before that one. I don't remember, but it was I think it was Jacob Allball, mutual friend of ours, talking about his.
He's bear hunting right now.
Oh, is he? I didn't realize he was going bear hunting again this year.
Oh yeah, he took that winner of the Primal Faith group.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
4 of them got dropped off in the middle of nowhere.
But listeners should tune in on my show this coming week because I'm replaying an old episode, the most listened to episode in First Gen Hunters 5-year podcast history. and that is the grizzly bear attack
I knew
on
it.
Jeremy Evans. I'm super busy with work right now. I had my friend Judd McCollum come on and do a quick intro with me on using perennial prairie plants to improve your hunting property. That's what I do for my 9 to 5, if there is such a thing in my world. And so that'll be on the first part of that, and then the conversation with Jeremy on his grizzly attack will be in the second half of that one. That is just a wild story.
Yeah, man. Well, good deal. Sounds like you got a lot of stuff cooking, so we'll have to tune in. I definitely get in my car rides and listen to just yours and Caleb's and some of the other additions you have on there. And I I like to I just it's interesting. I like to listen to podcasts, but I also like to listen to the very details of stuff, like, and obviously this is because we do podcasts, but like the audio and
Yeah.
the intros and all these other things. It's everybody's got a different feel, different vibe, and I really appreciate that on the creator side of things. So
Yeah, same here, man. It is. Once you start doing it, you realize how much those nuances take time wise and everything else.
Totally, man. It's workflow.
That's right.
Well, good deal. I know we talked a little bit on tags here and all that, but as we mentioned, it's pretty live and well right now with tag applications, and there's definitely still states to take advantage of. And if you miss some states allow us to get points at different times of the year, so you're still not too late. But I would encourage you to reach out quick, and let's get you rolling if you are interested in building some opportunities for this year or the future. Go ahead and head over to my website. That is east2westhunts.com. Go ahead and hit that free consultation button, and let's get talking about how we can assist you. And if you get a tag and you want a hunt plan, same deal. Go ahead and set up a time, and let's chat about what the opportunities are there and what that would look like and if it would work out for you. And lastly, obviously follow along on YouTube or any of the other podcast platforms. Listen in or watch these podcasts, and greatly appreciate you commenting and liking and subscribing and all that jazz. And I think that's all we got, man. So again, thanks for coming on, Kent, and we'll definitely see you on the next one. Just remember to scout, hunt, and repeat. See ya.
See ya.